Mick Finlay, and also to Laura Palmer, who is the fiction publishing director at Head of Zeus and is Lesley's editor. So hopefully we're going to speak a little bit about about the editing process and how you two work together, and also talk about, in the strangeness of things, what it's like being an editor at the time when the world has gone completely bonkers and nobody knows which way is up anymore, which affects pretty much everywhere and publishing. I quickly want to mention, before I get stuck in, because I'll forget if I don't, that at 7 o'clock tonight UK time, if you go to the address that I've put in the comments, Sarah Poretsky is doing a online thing much like this, talking about her books. And I thought it'd be quite nice to actually find ways of actually looking at what's going on in the States at the moment. So yeah, if you look in the comments, you should be able to see that there. Also, what else is there? Somebody asked me about World Book Night and what was happening about that, and I don't know. And I've just messaged the reading agency to see if they can spare somebody to come on and talk about that. But actually, this could make World Book Night quite a special thing, really, couldn't it? I mean, I quite like the idea of everybody being stuck at home reading books. Now, we've had some comments there, and somebody saying they can't hear us. So if anybody can hear us, could they just add the message? Because sometimes the sound goes funny.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I might have to put us in the Dallas format, because every time I obscure Lesley Thomson's face. There, that's better. And now Laura's going to have to work out which bit of the screen. In fact, we're going to have to work out which bit of the screen we're in. Welcome, Lesley. How are you doing? You're in a couple of weeks, you're going to publish something that we in the industry call a standalone. Can you explain what you've been up to?
Yes, a standalone. I say this to people and they go, what? Well, I'm not going to publish it. Laura is, but I loved writing it. I was very excited to write it, and I hope people like it. It's Death of a Mermaid comes out, as I say.
I should say the title if you don't.
Oh no, well anyway, whatever, Death of a Mermaid. Which should, I just, as I said, I loved the writing process. That was the research and the writing, and indeed working with Laura, which has been fantastic.
Well, I thought
it comes out in a couple of weeks.
The editing was great fun, because actually I've been working with Lesley now for 7 years, but always on the same world. And obviously there's lots of pleasures to be gained from that. But working with her on a completely new world, completely new characters, actually was just so enjoyable. We probably did more drafts than we would have done for a new book in the series, because there was more to establish. But it was really enjoyable. I loved working on it.
And Mick, you've had I've been talking to loads of writers in this sort of position, but you had the third book in your Arrowood series, Mick's wonderful book set in Victorian London with a detective called William Arrowood. And the third one is out kind of now, which is perfect timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's it feel like under COVID-19?
Yeah, it's perfect. It came out 2 weeks ago, in fact, to empty bookshops, shut bookshops. It wasn't ideal, but we have to adapt.
How did you feel then? Did it feel quite weird then? Because normally you do sneak, writers do sneak into bookshops and pretend they're not really looking for their own books, but we do it, don't we?
Yes.
And you couldn't do that this time around.
No, you can't do anything. All you can do is look on the internet.
Yes, and obsessively refresh Amazon, refresh, which is just absolute danger zone.
Yeah, I try not to look at those.
Am I allowed to, can I do a plug at this point? I was very lucky to get an early copy of Arrowsmith and the Thames Corpses, and it's completely unputdownable. And I'm still in the atmosphere of the mud of the Thames and the dark nights and the floating bodies. It's a good nod to our mutual friend, or rather, let's say Charles Dickens. And I think Mick is our new Charles Dickens. He's kind of inherited, if you like, the mantle, because it's just a fantastic book based in the 19th century, which you disappear into the world. So go and get it, everyone. Press that buy button there.
Well, thank you.
I'd love to add to that, but actually what I feel is I should be able to expand the space people take on the screen to allow Mick Head to sort of grow into this.
You could try that.
I'm going to say some hello. We've got some lovely people turning up who've been coming a lot. Hi to let me just go. Judith, who was on the show a while ago. Hi to Grania, saying hello to Lesley. Susan Baines, hi Susan. Hi Keith. Hi Sven, calling in from Hamburg. Very good to see you. Guten Tag, Sven. It's a bit German. Keith, Caroline, and Domenica De Rosa said hi Lesley and hi Mick. Domenica De Rosa is obviously Ellie Griffiths. Hi Andy Hill. So with that interruption, I'm not going to read out everybody, but it's I think they'll feel left out if I don't, having started. So back a bit to Death of a Mermaid. When Lesley said, I'm going to do a standalone, is that how it started? Did Lesley come and say, oh, I'm doing a standalone this time? And if so, going, oh.
No, I think actually the idea, it was either mutual or it was led by us. Certainly we were very involved in the decision, because I think after 7 years, you feel like you want to change the conversation that you're having with the retailers. So Lesley had established herself a fan base, and it gets quite difficult to grow a fan base much bigger than it already is if you're publishing book 7, book 8 in a series, because understandably people don't always want to jump in to a series at that point. So we thought, let's publish a standalone, do a completely new campaign, completely fresh approach, bring in lots of new readers there. And obviously, you know, firstly, Lesley had a great idea for a standalone anyway, but secondly, from a publishing point of view, that then gives you a whole new audience, and you can then sell the Detective's Daughter series to that audience once you've brought them in with the new book. So
I wanted to write something other than Jack and Stella, not the Detective's Daughter series, not because I was tired of them at all. And people have asked me that, but there are ideas you have, and I'm sure that, you know, Mick and William, you've had this too. Well, I know, William, definitely you have, so we've talked about it too. That you have ideas that just won't fit into the box, if you like, that is the series. You're fixed, when you're writing a series, you're fixed by certain dates. When, like, Stella was born in 1966, so she can't have been doing something aged 18 in 1995 or something. And so in order to sort of explore those things, it's great to have a completely, well, to make a pun on Detective's Daughter, a clean slate, which I found I wanted to do. And we at about the same time as I was thinking I'd like to do this, Laura asked me if I would. So it was a great, lovely bit of synergy, really.
And when you talk about that sort of thing, about relationship, do you, as an editor, how, when you're reading a manuscript, and there are obviously things that you think, oh, that's working, that's not working, how tactful do you have to be, Laura?
Honestly, it depends on the author. I think Lesley and I have a very good working relationship. I probably don't need to be that tactful. If I think something needs work, I'll just say it.
No.
If I was working with an author who I knew less well, then I would perhaps be a bit more cautious. But it really depends. It really depends on the author. I think broadly, though, I try and be careful not to be a writer in my editing. I try and always think like a reader. I am a reader first and foremost. That's why I love editing. So I'm always coming at it from a point of view of a reader, saying, as a reader, I didn't find this bit compelling, or I didn't understand this character. So in a way, as long as that's genuine, then you sort of don't need to be that tactful, because the writer can't possibly know what the reader will think, because they can't be the reader.
Now, Mick, you're
I just need to say, actually.
What was that, Lesley?
Well, I was only just going to counter it, that if the feedback that I've had from Laura has, and this isn't sort of being flannel or anything, if you're being less tactful with me, good God, I can't think what you're like with other people, because I mean, one thing I love about working with Laura is the sensitivity. And no, this isn't kind of like, you know, the sensitivity towards the writer, the understanding that, you know, we are creatures of kind of like easily hurt, and actually the humour and the warmth and sensitivity you bring to your feedback is exemplary. And certainly,
thanks.
I mean, we teach creative writing, you know. It's feedback that could be learnt.
I suppose I also should say I'm married to a writer, so I do know how editorial notes can make him feel, and so, you know, I have a sense of, you know, how important the book is to a writer as well. So
it's a tough moment. first time you get the notes and the first come through, the first sort of hours after you read them? How do you find it, Mick? I mean, you're an academic. You presumably used to writing and used to getting criticism. When you're writing fiction, it's a whole different game, presumably.
It's much more personal with fiction, and also it's an article may take you 4 or 5 months to write, but a book can take you 1.5 years to write. So yeah, it is much more personal. It's hard to take criticism in either domain, actually. And people do get very upset when they get articles back from journals and they don't agree with the peer reviews and things like that. But at least you can, it's often a technical fix, really, that you're being asked to do, whereas with writing, it may be about tone or humor or emotions and stuff like that, which goes straight more to the heart. And,
definitely. How have you found, I mean, like third in a series, I don't know, we're both series writers, me and Lesley, and I think there's a certain point when you begin to wonder how much more you've got in that world. Did the third one come easily, or was it hard? Arrowood and the Thames Corpses.
Actually, I found the second one the hard one because it dealt with much more about psychological themes, Victorian psychology, and the treatment of people with learning disabilities in that time. And I'd worked for a number of years in that field, so that was much more personal, and I didn't want to get it wrong. But the third one, no, I didn't. The only sense I found it harder was that I think I'd dealt with much more. I had some very difficult scenes to write in it. So there's a suicide scene. In fact, oh my God, there's 2 actually, which was not done deliberately, but actually fits the plot in different ways. And that sort of thing is very hard to write because you don't want to get those things wrong.
It's a wonderful world, as Lesley was saying. I mean, there's such great sort of, foul pipe Annie. Where did she come from?
There's a ratting scene in the book. And if you don't know about ratting, it was this terrible Victorian sport where they'd build maybe in the upper room of a pub, build a little arena, and they'd throw in 20 or 30 rats, and then they'd drop a dog in the middle of it, and they'd time the dog for 2 minutes and see how many rats it could kill.
Oh,
people would bet on these affairs, and they were incredibly bloody, with rats' entrails flying about and blood everywhere, and the dogs would get bitten and the rats would get bitten, and it's just horrible. But some people made their living out of supplying rats for the ratting competition, and there was a very famous one called Jack Black, and everybody in London knew him, and he used to wear this tall black stovepipe hat, and he had rats in all his pockets as he walked through.
You must just love it when you come across a detail like that in your research. That must just be absolutely make your day, doesn't it?
It's absolutely the best thing about writing historical fiction.
Brilliant.
Is that, yeah, there are these people out or were out there, and people have written about them. It's fantastic. So I knew I had to have a characterful rat collector, and I thought I'd have it as a woman instead of a man. And I couldn't work out how to make I quite like names, idiosyncratic names. And often in working class Victorian London, people did get names that reflected what they did or what they looked like. So foul pipe Annie just refers to the foul toilet foul pipes that she might have found her rats in.
Oh,
she's a great character. It's great.
I can't wait to read this.
I just think it's very funny.
I'm going to be downloading it right after
when
this.
you're discussing this.
Sorry?
There was a laugh from Laura, and me and William were going, it's this sort of psychopathic nature of crime writers and crime editors that they get very excited by rats being thrown into an upstairs room. And think, now there's a gem.
Sure. It's what we live for.
Yeah. Lesley, do you shy away from disgusting scenes? How do you feel about them?
I think I do, actually, quite simply. As some of my writer friends know, I'm not great on scenes where people throw up. I'm not great on people throwing up anyway. And so I can't have anybody being sick in my books. And there's not a lot of blood, really, actually. No. I mean, I tried to put... I'm trying to think now how people die in The Death of a Mermaid, but I know there was blood to start with, and in the end there wasn't. There was strangling and one of the drafts had to get rid of the odd knife that still hung about, even though the murder had become a strangling and not a stabbing. So I'm not good on mess. Although I can read, like I could certainly have, there was no issue. Well, I say no issue. There obviously was with the entrails flying and a lot of blood in your books, obviously. But it all feels, it's that classic. It makes sense to the plot, and it's part of the story. So I can handle it, but I don't do it myself.
Yeah.
Andy Hill asks, do you push back on some editorial suggestions, Lesley?
Well, is that a question for me or Laura, I suppose? I've sometimes, I could probably say that and it's now 8 books, isn't it? That I've probably disagreed with a point Laura's made about twice, but actually I haven't disagreed so much with, I might have disagreed with the point, but not the premise. So I'll see the premise and I'll think, well, actually I get the thing that Laura means here, but I'm not going to do what she thinks might be the solution. I'll do this. And Laura's always fine with that. So
yeah, and that's usually that's because you've come up with a much better solution. And actually that I think can make for a really good editorial relationship. It's where the editor identifies the problem and suggests a solution, but the author then suggests a much better solution, because after all, they know the book most intimately, and they might say, well, a character just wouldn't do that, so we can't solve it that way, but I see what you're saying and I'll think about a different way. So that can often be where the real magic happens, I think.
These suggestions, you either you have a face-to-face meeting,
right.
or they arrive by email, and I always disagree with them until about 2 o'clock in the morning, when I have this horrible realization when I realize they're all right. But actually, often it's like, oh yeah, actually that will make it a lot better.
Yeah. I find exactly the same. But if you have a gap between receiving them on the email and then going to talk to your editor, if that gap is about a week, by the time you meet with the editor, you have come up with fixes for a lot of things. Yeah. And often, if you can suggest your fixes to your editor, it's really nice. You get this sort of synergy where your editor then suggests something on top of your fix, which then you put something on top of that, and suddenly you've made something quite lovely as a result of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my absolute favourite thing when that happens. Yes. That's what we're all aiming for.
And it's the truth that books are not written alone. They're not written by one person, are they? I mean, I think you require other people's, at the very least, you require other people's sort of opinions on it at some stage. And actually then quite often new ideas come in that spark it. And it's a sort of iterative process that can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it has to be. And, it doesn't just take lots of people to create the book, but also to publish it. I mean, actually the size of a team that you need to publish a book successfully always astonishes people who aren't in publishing, I think. But actually every book has probably had, even in a small company like Head of Zeus, has probably had about 10 people put work in just from the company. That always astonishes me.
Well, let's talk about this now, because publishing is suddenly in a really weird situation where publishers right across the board have furloughed a huge amount of their staff.
Yeah.
Lots of titles, I mean, Lesley's and Mick's not, but lots of titles have been put back. There's all sorts of, bookshops aren't open. You don't know where you're selling to. So what does it feel like to be in the industry at the moment?
Well, at our company, I mean, I can only speak from the point of view of a smallish independent. So for those who don't know, Head of Zeus, we're a team of 35. We're independent and we publish everything from non-fiction to children's fiction to commercial fiction to literary fiction. So we have put a pause on most of our print programme for the next 3 months, for May, June and July. And that's meant that a lot of books have then been correspondingly delayed by 3 months. But we're publishing our ebooks and audiobooks on the original date. And we furloughed all of the staff except for 12 core of a core team. We're calling ourselves the Night Watch. And we are, suddenly the 12 of us are kind of expected to do a lot of work across departments. We're focusing a lot more on our digital publishing, on our online PR, obvious things, and we're focusing more on our commercial fiction than on our non-fiction, because commercial fiction has a higher percentage of our sales come from ebooks, and obviously ebooks are booming at the moment. So we've had to kind of be very flexible.
Is that a fact? I mean, it's quite hard from our position as writers to know what's going on because you've been told those things. But does it feel like, from your point of view, that ebook sales are actually doing well at the moment?
It feels like they are. I mean, it is quite hard because, as you probably know, publishers get information from Amazon with some delay. So you don't get all of your sales information until 3 months after the book has made the sale. But we at Head of Zeus, and probably other companies have this as well, I assume, we have some sort of mathematical algorithm type thing that I don't really understand that calculates how many sales we think we've got based on our ranking on Amazon for a certain book. So we think that we've seen an uptick in our ebook sales. And also just anecdotally, I mean, you know, everybody is talking about reading, and you know, there are only so many things you can do in lockdown. Reading is one of them. So we've been putting a lot of effort into our digital sales, but also, you know, there are still outlets for hardbacks. And as long as you are not, I think as long as you're not hoping for a huge hardback sale, which actually for most of our authors, we probably see maybe 2,000 hardbacks is a sort of, would be a decent sale for most authors. And, you know, that's the kind of level you can still achieve even without having all of the print bookshops open at the moment. And remember that those book sales can come over the course of a whole year. So libraries, for example, are not being supplied at the moment because the wholesalers have temporarily shut, but they might reopen. But we can still supply books to those libraries later in the year when the wholesalers reopen. So as long as we don't see the publication window as just a 3-month period, and as long as we see, you know, we try and publish a book kind of across its whole life, so through the whole year, then I think we should be okay. I think we should.
Tomorrow I'm doing a sort of ebook special with Sarah Hillary, and one of the guests is Alexander Hawley, who does a book review site about audiobooks. Do you think that uptick will carry on from? We've lost.
We've lost Lesley.
Lost Lesley. She'll be back. Do you think that uptick will continue?
The uptick
for audio?
For audio, yes.
New people are discovering new forms.
I think so. I mean, I can tell that Audible is very keen to take advantage of everything that's going on because they're offering a lot of audiobooks for free. So I think they are trying to make people listen to more audiobooks. At the moment, we have a slight issue with audio in that the system that Audible has, Audible obviously being the major retailer, is that most people are on a subscription model where they get really just one audiobook a month. So it's not the same as with ebooks where, you know, heavy ebook buyers might buy 25 ebooks in a month. And so as publishers, you can really take advantage of that with clever pricing and other strategies. With audio, it's very hard to become that one book of the month. So I'm not sure what will happen with our audiobook sales, let's say. I think audio in general will certainly grow. And then long term, that will be good for the health of the audio industry.
I like the way you've just shuffled position there. So,
yes.
Welcome back, Lesley.
Hi, Lesley. Where did you go?
I could hear you most of the time, but my everything just died on me. I don't know what happened, but there we go.
It's very edgy, this medium, you know. We're very on. You never know what's going to happen.
I know. I suppose if this was an event, it would be the equivalent of falling off my chair, I suppose, wouldn't it?
Domenica asked any suggestions for lockdown reading. I've just finished Girl, Woman, Other, which I wouldn't have read, I don't think. So stupid, and I thought that was brilliant. Any suggestion from you lot about stuff to be getting on with?
Well,
it seems to be
I just before lockdown, I had the hardback of the new Hilary Mantel sent to me at the office, and so much was my need to read it that I went back to the office despite not really being allowed to retrieve it post lockdown. So I've now started reading that, but it's massive. So I imagine I'll finish it sometime in 2021. The rate I'm going, but it's brilliant.
Yes. I agree. I'm now two-thirds of the way through it and absolutely loving it. And actually, it's a lockdown delight because you've got a hell of a lot of it, haven't you? So
exactly.
On it goes. I'm actually intermixing it with your book, William, Grave's End, which comes out, I believe, on the same day as my book, which is the 7th of May. And I think we're having a launch for that with Ellie Griffiths. We were going to launch at Waterstones with Ellie Griffiths, but we'll do a Waterstones in the Sky now. But
yeah,
when it does come out, Gravesend, I can absolutely recommend. I think it's just fantastic. It's next in the series with Ferreter and oh God, I've gone blank with a C. Cupidity, yes, Cupidity, Ferreter and Cupidity, and it's just great. I mean, it's just Birdwatcher is sort of the first one, and then just keep going, Deadland, and it's brilliant. So that's a treat for everybody on May the 7th.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to both Williams and Leslie's on May the 7th. I've read Journal of the Plague Year by Defoe, which has been on my bookshelves for like 20 years, and I've always been meaning to read it. So.
How does it feel? Does it feel slightly saner in our times?
It seems just the same. That's the funny thing. So there are so many similarities. It's quite bizarre that we haven't moved on in 400 years. All the chaotic responses, the lockdowns, the richer people going out to the countryside and leaving poorer people to struggle on the plague.
Yeah.
It's extraordinarily similar, and all the strange beliefs and the bizarre theories and fake news that were around at the time. Nothing.
Is Death of Mermaid out as an audiobook?
Yes. Well, it was supposed to be out as an audiobook on the same day as the hardback and ebook publication, 7th of May. But unfortunately, the narrator we had chosen isn't able to get to the studio because of lockdown. So we've had to change the narrator. But we found a really good narrator. So now it will be out 2 weeks later. So the 21st of May, it will be published as an audiobook. And it will be
I saw a question just before that from Domenica Drozas asking Mick and I, well, in fact, this really applies to all of us, doesn't it? Will we be writing about COVID-19 at any point? Anybody?
I'm not, no, I write historical novels.
Yeah, well, maybe we could write about the plague year. I was just thinking that, actually, Peter May's got his book out about, which was something in his bottom drawer called Lockdown Now. But, it's a book about a similar sort of virus. And actually, when I was speaking to Val McDermott yesterday, she'd done a radio play about an epidemic. And actually, I think, on the first thing, it's like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. But actually, I think what Peter May's one's quite interesting. The idea is, how would you conduct a murder investigation under lockdown?
I think that's interesting too.
You don't do about the epidemic, but you do about how life has changed and how you're trying to do really important things under those circumstances. And I think, and presumably this is happening, and I bet it's a nightmare. Just trying to get the workforce there. So I wouldn't say no, but I am terrified. I keep talking about this. I'm terrified about because unlike Mick, actually, I think historical fiction's in a really good place right now. You know what history is, but we don't know what the present is anymore.
No, and actually, I'm working with an author at the moment whose book has just gone to the proofreader, and it was set in 2020, but obviously she wrote it before COVID. So we've now had to go through and change all of the dates, because otherwise there's a book set in 2020 which has no mention of COVID. So we've had to go and reset it in 2019, which, as Lesley will know, changing timelines in your book is a mighty pain. So I think that's a sort of weird aspect of the current corona crisis that I didn't expect, but actually makes sense. But I'm sure there will be lots of COVID thrillers.
Well, I must be known as calendar girl at Head of Zeus for the number of times I've messed up with dates. And my present was set in 2020 until all of this, and so it's had to go back to 19. But I'm writing about the Blitz at the moment. I've got half a novel set in 1940, and the other half is set now in 1919. And I'm obviously finding quite a few correlations. Oh,
well, so it's 2020. What is? You said now in 2019, and I just wanted to sort of, anyway, sorry.
Oh, yes, 2019. See what I mean about the dates. Anyway, the Blitz is giving me there's so many parallels. That's enough for me, I think, really, because I mean, they're even using words like whether journeys are essential, phrases like that. And you just realise that we're inheriting from past things. And you also realise how the government was scrabbling even during the war to try and get things right, and make the right decisions, whether it's about Anderson shelters or whether the people can use the tube or what have you. So there's enough parallel for me. I don't think I'm going to be particularly going near lockdown, although of course, yes, I mean, locked rooms is what we crime writers have as our kind of history. So how to commit a murder in lockdown would be another thing, but there we go.
The ultimate locked room mystery.
Yeah.
There was a question for me, which is always a nice rarity, and somebody asked me, and I scrolled past it, but I'd say the bird watcher.
Well, I know there was one, which was somebody wanted to know they'd read Salt Lane and they wanted to know whether they should read the bird watcher, and the answer is yes.
Yes, the bird watcher is brilliant.
Yeah.
Caroline's right. It does come out now on July 23rd, but we'll still be doing a launch party. That's for Gravesend, because the ebook and the other stuff will be coming out in May, just to keep everything confusing. But that's the thing. Loads of publishers, some do the ebooks early. I think your ebook was early, wasn't it, Mick?
No, I don't think so. I might be wrong, but I don't think so, though.
Okay, I'm just making stuff up now.
Yeah.
Why not bring Peter May? Why not bring Peter May on in the near future? I'll watch this space. Me and Peter have been talking about it. We actually want to find something interesting to talk about, and we've been noodling around a topic for several weeks, and it hasn't quite come together. But he'll be here. There's loads.
I love the note about the Peter May book being rejected for being too far-fetched. Haha, publishers know nothing. That's just a reminder. We all know nothing.
Publishers do know nothing. It's an exasperating thing. I mean, publishing is a terrible industry in that you've got to try and sell these books. So it makes you very cautious. And therefore you must, it's naturally conservative industry, which nobody goes into publishing to be conservative.
No, it is a strange surprise when you enter publishing and suddenly you realise that the sort of niche literary poetry that you thought you wanted to publish is not going to be possible. And actually, what people really want is exactly the same as that thing that worked last year, but just with something tiny bit different.
Laura, are you anticipating some other genre, some particular type of book becoming popular after this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the agents are usually quite a good bellwether, because the books that they are submitting to us editors now are the books that we will be buying now for publication in a year. So, and they seem to be submitting a lot of feel-good stuff. So I think the logic being that people want really kind of escapist, cozy stories. I haven't been submitted any very good crime lately, and I don't know if that's because maybe people want happier books. Certainly for my part, I'm a thriller lover through and through, so I'm keen. Most of my escapism comes from gory, ghastly, fast-paced, heart-pounding thrillers, so I'm hoping that people will keep writing those.
I'm sure they will. I mean, I think the publishing industry gets cold feet continually about things, and they're always proved wrong. You know what I mean? Readers still like the stuff readers do. But I do think historical fiction is going to be a good one now, because I think we like crime, but putting it in the past also has a kind of coziness in a weird way.
It does.
Victorian London, and somehow we know it's somewhere else.
And cozy is going to be 3 months ago now, isn't it? Rather than 1945 or something, or Neo Marsh. It's just going to be before lockdown. BL.
I think historical crime works as well, because readers quite, it's nice to feel that you're learning something from a book. And so, if you're reading historical crime, you get the thrills, you get the fun, you get the page turner, but you come out of it feeling a little bit smarter, and like it wasn't sort of empty calories, so I think historical fiction should be a perennial, I'd say.
But even then, I've had publishers say, because I was writing a thing, I've had the sort of things like, oh, they're not buying that now. We're generally in foreign sales. I think foreign sales get a bit cautious about it sometimes. But anyway, listen, we talked way too long. It's like over half an hour, which is going to be my cut-off point. But people have lots of books to read. Please don't get Arrowood and the Thames Corpses, because it's a brilliant series. And please also look out for Death of the Mermaid, coming out very shortly, because in an extraordinary standalone, a really brilliant picture of life in a small town and the little things sometimes they get swept under carpets and how they come back to bite you in peculiar ways.
It really is good. It really is good.
Thank you so much, Mick. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you. I'm going to, I'll just put this comment on the screen so he's not ignored. Hi, Barry. And
thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.